Hi there! Today I'm going to show you my most awesome bolt action Imperial Japanese Marines from the Special Navy Landing Force box. Of course, the main thing that makes these Japanese figures different from the normal box is the helmets and the two lead figures you get in the box. The helmets are a particular design mainly used by the Imperial Japanese Navy, although the Army did use some of them. The equipment, there's enough equipment to kit out all the troops, and the equipment consists of the standard Japanese equipment that you get in the normal infantry box, but this time you have a gas mask on the back, and the gas mask is the thing that really makes these guys look different for the period. The Germans had their gas mask in a little barrel, the British had theirs in a little box, whereas the Japanese had the pipe and everything hanging out the back, which just looks cool. The most interesting hat out of all of them, I thought, was this hat here, which is the Imperial Navy hat. It's a very nice little hat used because these guys are Marines after all, and their off-duty uniform is a naval rating uniform. Then this hat looks really cool, and I decided, because it's such a cool hat, to give it to the guy with the standard. The flag I've given them is the Navy flag as opposed to the Army flag, and I just think that looks really good on that particular figure. And I've also got a rifle slung on his back, so at least he's still armed. I can class him as a rifleman. And there you can see the gas mask in his gas mask bag, and he's got a little shovel and stuff with him as well, so it's quite a nice little figure, that one. And talking of nice figures, I will show you these two. These are the lead figures you get in the box. They're wearing, well, I've painted it up as a Japanese flag, so they've got the white flag with a little bit of red showing the roundel. Japanese use various ceremonial things to tie around their heads and things like that, and they also, every Japanese soldier was given a sort of belt with 1,000 stitches. Theoretically, you would the women in your local town would each put one stitch in the garment, and then you would put it around your waist, and it would theoretically stop bullets. Didn't work, but anyway, there you go. And so here you have the very nice little figures with that on. Another little amendment I made to this particular group of soldiers is, of course, the inclusion of a flamethrower. The Imperial Japanese Army used large numbers of flamethrowers. They were very handy and useful. However, as the war went on, it became hard to actually find the fuel for them. The Special Navy landing troops use flamethrowers too, so I have kitted this guy out with a little flamethrower. I've only done one, but I think he looks quite cool. He's got a little flamethrower on his pack, you can see the wire, and I just had some fun with it. I also gave flamethrowers to my Army paratroopers as well, because I thought they looked even cooler.
Two of them?
Two of them, yes, because I've got two squads, and each platoon had a flamethrower. In fact, each platoon,
anti-tank weapon.
Yes, each platoon had two flamethrowers, although only one was used, because only one man was trained to use a flamethrower, or was designated to use a flamethrower. He had special gloves and everything. So when the flamethrower ran out, after 30 seconds of continuous fire, you would swap the flamethrower over and stick the other flamethrower on his back.
What happens if he was on the plane, it was facing backwards, and a bullet went through his canister here? What would happen?
We didn't wear it on the plane. It was dropped in a canister, and the canisters were assembled.
What happens if he got shot though? And he blew up?
What, carrying a flamethrower?
Yeah.
Well, put it this way, people don't run around next to him. He tends to go forward on his own, and his friends sort of shout encouragement as he advances.
And blows
because
up.
his overall survivability on a battlefield is quite small, because if you see a flamethrower guy coming towards you, then every single person on the battlefield is going to want to shoot him. Probably including some of your own troops. So, flamethrower aside, we get back to the actual figures. The kit you get on it is, as I said, the standard kit. What I did, I cut a few water bottles off of the sprues and stuck them on the back of the figures in the areas where the kit wasn't hanging, because because the Japanese, I like covering them in equipment, because the Japanese tend to be equipment heavy. I should point out, most armies are equipment heavy. However, the Japanese had to make sure they carried all their equipment with them, whereas most others would have people to carry stuff for them. The British used porters quite a lot, and so you didn't have to carry all of your kit on you all the time. Although when you did, I'll point out that the Japanese carried far less kit than the actual British did. Primarily because the British, Americans and everyone else who were fighting the Chinese had to carry water bottles. The Japanese only carried one water bottle, and they didn't need any more than that, because the Japanese had invented water purification tablets. And so they would put a tablet in their water bottle, fill it from a local stream, and walk around drinking it.
But didn't tell anybody?
Well, they did, no, they used them, and that's why the Japanese were quite successful at the beginning of the war, because their soldiers didn't get ill.
Did the Chinese use it?
No.
So they did carry those water?
Yes, they had massive amounts of water that they had to carry around. But again, like the British, they used large amounts of porters.
Why?
People who carry stuff for you.
That's mean.
Well, actually, it's a lot safer than being a regular infantryman. You know, if some British idiot turns up and says, "Excuse me, we're having a war in your native jungle. I'll give you some money or some food or whatever if you porter this stuff around for me," then it's actually not too bad a job. As long as you're not actually in combat. And generally we didn't send porters into combat.
What do you mean generally? Meaning we did, some of them?
Well, sometimes they got caught out and ambushed, and given when the Japanese were advancing, they tended to advance very quickly. The poor old porters and engineers and people would tend to find themselves behind enemy lines, because the Japanese would overrun the British positions. The Japanese would advance faster than the British. Same with the Americans. One great complaint by the commander of the Dutch East Indies forces when the Japanese attacked. These guys, actually, the Special Navy landing troops and paratroopers, landed and invaded the island. And the Dutch figured they could hold out for months until the Americans would come and save them. It didn't turn out that way. The Japanese, instead of concentrating their forces on one position, they acted like a hydra.
What's a hydra?
A multi-headed snake.
So one went in left, one went in centre, one went right.
Yeah, and another guy got back in a boat and sailed all the way around the island and came in behind you. Yeah, it was awful.
So you had to fight on all fronts?
Yes, you find yourself fighting on all fronts. And although Japanese presence wasn't heavy in one particular place, you were not able to get your troops to the right place to fight.
So you were surrounded?
Yeah. In Malaya, the British managed to actually stop the Japanese. We created a gun line across the jungle, and we just pounded hell out of the Japanese for about, 4 or 5 days? And we stopped the Japanese dead, because we had a solid defence line. And the Japanese just got in boats, went down the coast and came in behind us, which made the whole thing pointless. And then our troops ran away and left all our artillery. So the Japanese captured our guns.
Free artillery?
Yeah, and we ended up defending Singapore with machine guns, because most of our artillery was still on the mainland. Absolute disaster. Very hard to cope with troops who are capable of living off the land and moving quickly. And also the Japanese did not rely on heavy and medium tanks and things. They relied on bicycles and light tanks, which could travel fast over rough ground and didn't need too much petrol. So there we have the Japanese Special Navy landing troops. They're painted in green, the dark green smock, which you can see, they're not smock, dark green uniform. Special Navy landing troops who operated with the Imperial Air Force, they wore grey overalls, the same as the Japanese army paratroopers. Although when they landed, they tended to strip the overalls off and use the green underneath. Later on in the war, they were all issued with khaki, so it made no difference. I'll also point a few other things out about equipment, and that's that, like all Japanese forces, all Japanese weapons are the same caliber. So a Type 100 machine gun, if he runs out of bullets, can ask the rifleman next to him for bullets, and the rifleman can ask the heavy machine gunner for bullets, because they all fire the same gun, same bullet. The British were bringing the same thing in at the outbreak of war. We'd learnt our lesson from World War I. It just took us 20 odd years to actually get around to implementing it. Hence the 303, which was the standard round for the Enfield, was also the standard round for our standard machine gun, which was the reason they did it. There you go, that's a bit of interesting factoid that you will never use for the rest of your life.
Well, if someone gives you a question about it in your GCSEs or something.
Yeah, but I'm not likely to be taking my GCSEs again. And besides, I got failed for history. So, here we have Special Navy Landing Forces. I'm going to change the subject. Did I point out the officer there as well? He's quite nice.
It looks like a rifleman to me.
He's actually an observer.
It looks like it's also hiding.
Yes, I've done a few up as observers, so you can use them either as normal infantry. I should explain, if you don't play bolt action normally, you have snipers, observers, every machine gun or whatever has a crewman, there's a spare crewman with it. So here you can see a pair here, can you see that? Shall I zoom the camera out so you can see better?
Why, that's my job.
Well, I did it for you. Here you have a mortar team, so you've got the mortar and a guy next to him who helps him fire. And during the firing you don't need, the helper doesn't help him fire, he helps the machine gun. He doesn't fire himself, he helps the gun to fire. Same here. But you can also reconfigure them and have a sniper with a spotter, or you can have an observer.
Why don't you put it like so they can see it?
See, this is what happens when you let someone else do the camera work. I'll put the machine guns at the front so you can see them.
Now you can't see them. You want to be cameraman?
There you go, now you can see them. So what you can generally do, if you decide you want to have a mortar team, you've got your nice little mortar team there, you've got your mortar team here and your machine gun team, or you can have one guy as an observer who can observe for you, or you can have one of these guys as a sniper and he's the guy who is the eyes and ears for the sniper. It's quite a simple system, and I find it much more useful basing figures individually, so you can actually turn them into whatever you want when you need to use that particular variation of unit. Special Navy landing troops were more or less what it said on the tin. They were Marines, basically, like any other Marine, and they were specifically trained to carry out landing operations in enemy territory. There were 3 Special Navy landing troops divisions, each one named after the port where they were raised and where they were organised, where their headquarters were. And 1 battalion from each division was taken out and turned into paratroopers. Some of those paratroopers themselves became glider landing troops, which is exactly the same uniform as you see here, so you can use these as glider bomb troops just as well as running off a landing craft or jumping off a submarine or whatever you want to do with them. They're pretty versatile. I should also point out that the Americans are actually more or less the same. They had more or less the same kit and uniform for all the different types of troops they used in the Pacific. So you can do the same with the Americans. You can use them as landing troops, or you can use them as the support troops who came in after, although the army carried on wearing the standard army uniform. So there we go. Here's the end of the video, and I finally stopped talking. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope I've been slightly insightful for you, giving you a few ideas about anything to do with Japanese, really, because I think the Japanese army is a brilliant army to play. I've always been interested in the period, and I think Japanese is something that often gets left out of gaming. And when people do Japanese, they always have to do the American island hopping campaigns, which is at the end of the war. They never seem to want to do the fun stuff, which is Malaya, China, Russia, all those other battles that you're missing out. Just think, if you've got a Russian army that fights the Germans, you can fight against the Japanese as well. Even with your late war heavy tanks, still fought against the Japanese. I've suddenly thought of a new project.
Maybe we should try and end the video. Maybe just try it.
Okay. This is Vespasian. Please click like and do that other stuff you do with YouTube videos. And subscribe if you want to hear me blathering about wargaming figures. Thank you. Goodbye. Oh, and goodbye from the annoying person on the other end of the camera.
I'll give you a golden medal for ending the video. See you guys.